The atmosphere inside the arena wasn't just electric. It was suffocating. It was the kind of tension that builds not from what is happening, but from what might happen. For months, the entire landscape had felt hollow, a kingdom without its ruler. The rumors had been circulating for weeks, starting as desperate whispers in online forums and growing into a deafening roar of expectation. "Tonight is the night," they said. "She's been cleared." But nobody really believed it. It seemed too soon, too cinematic. The injury was severe, the silence from her camp absolute. Liv Morgan's so-called revenge tour had done its job. It had decapitated the women's division, removing its apex predator and leaving a vacuum that no one else could fill. The championship itself felt like a prop, a placeholder waiting for its true owner. Every time the lights dimmed for an entrance, 10,000 people held their breath, only to exhale in a collective sigh of disappointment. The opening matches were a blur, a formality. The crowd was restless, their eyes glued to the entrance ramp, waiting for a sign. This wasn't just about a superstar returning. It was about balance. It was about the restoration of an era. The void she left wasn't just in the roster. It was in the hearts of everyone who watched. They didn't just want a wrestler back. They wanted their leader. They wanted their mommy. And the weight of that collective hope pressed down on the building, making the air thick and heavy with anticipation. And then, it happened. The arena was plunged into absolute darkness. A single, guttural guitar riff tore through the silence. The explosion of noise wasn't just a cheer, it was a physical release. 10,000 people screaming in unison as the first notes of her theme song hit their chests. The sound was deafening. On the ramp, a silhouette formed against the blinding white lights. She didn't move. She just stood there, letting the moment hang, letting the sound wash over her. The camera panned across the front row. Faces were streaked with tears. People were holding each other, pointing, their minds failing to process what their eyes were seeing. It was her. Rhea Ripley was back. She took one step, then another, the familiar swagger returning. She wasn't just walking. She was reclaiming her territory. She slapped the ring apron, and the sound echoed like a proclamation. She climbed the steps, entered the ring, and grabbed a microphone. The smile on her face was one of pure, unadulterated triumph. She had survived. She had overcome. She was home. The crowd chanted her name, a rolling, thunderous wave of, "Mommy! Mommy! Mommy!" This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. This was the payback. This was the celebration. It was perfect. Rhea soaked it all in, the microphone pressed against her lips. The smile was wide, genuine. She was about to speak, to finally break her silence, to thank the fans and put the entire roster on notice. The world was hanging on her first words, but they never came. Instead, a different theme song cut through the arena. The celebratory noise died instantly, replaced by a confused, angry murmur. The screen flashed. The Revenge Tour, and out walked Liv Morgan. The crowd erupted in a chorus of boos, a visceral, hateful sound. But Liv wasn't fazed. She wasn't dressed in her ring gear. She was wearing street clothes, a simple black hoodie, her hands stuffed in her pockets. She walked slowly, a strange, serene smile on her face. It wasn't the smile of a maniac. It was the smile of someone who knew a secret. She didn't stomp to the ring. She glided. She bypassed the ring steps, sliding under the bottom rope with a casual ease that was deeply unsettling. The entire arena was on its feet, screaming warnings at Rhea, who stood frozen, her triumphant smile now replaced by a mask of wary confusion. Liv just stood there, a few feet away, that calm, almost gentle smile never leaving her face. Liv slowly raised her hands, palms up, in a gesture of peace. She wasn't here to fight, or so it seemed. The crowd's boos softened, turning into a low, confused hum. What was this? Rhea held the microphone like a weapon, her eyes narrowed, trying to read the situation. Liv just tilted her head, still smiling. She took one step forward, then another. She stood directly in front of Rhea, close enough to touch. The tension was unbearable. And then Liv did the unthinkable. She opened her arms, offering an embrace. The entire building went silent. A hug. Now, after everything, after the injury, the title, the months of torment, Rhea looked out at the crowd, her face a portrait of disbelief. Was this respect? Was this an apology? A truce? Hesitantly, slowly, Rhea lowered the microphone. She let one arm fall to her side. She met Liv's gaze, and after a long, agonizing second, she accepted the hug. The crowd let out a confused, almost relieved cheer. Maybe the war was over. And in that precise moment of vulnerability, that single second of peace, boom. Liv's serene smile vanished. Her arm, wrapped around Rhea's back, suddenly drove a steel chair, hidden under her hoodie, directly into Rhea's recently repaired shoulder. A sickening crack echoed through the microphone. Rhea collapsed, screaming. The crowd's gasp was stolen from their lungs. The attack wasn't frantic. It was methodical. It was cold. This wasn't a brawl. It was an execution. Liv Morgan, her face now a blank mask of concentration, stood over the fallen Rhea. She didn't yell. She didn't taunt. She simply dropped the chair, only to pick it up again. She looked down, not at Rhea, but specifically at the shoulder she had spent months working to destroy. And she hit it again, and again, and again. Each impact was punctuated by the collective shriek of the audience. This was beyond wrestling. It was cruel. She wasn't trying to win a match. She was trying to end a career. The message was clear. The revenge tour had never ended. It had just been waiting. Liv grabbed the microphone Rhea had dropped. She didn't say a word. She just held it up, listening to the deafening chorus of hatred, the chants of, "You went too far." She looked at the championship belt sitting on the commentary table, then back at Rhea's broken form. She placed the microphone on Rhea's chest, a symbolic gesture as if to say, "You have nothing left to say." She had stolen Rhea's moment, stolen her health, and stolen her voice, all in less than 60 seconds. As quickly as she had arrived, Liv Morgan was gone. She slid back out of the ring, that same eerie calm returning to her face as she backed up the ramp, never taking her eyes off the destruction she had wrought. She didn't celebrate. She just watched. Back in the ring, the scene was one of chaos. Medical staff and officials swarmed the canvas, their faces pale with genuine concern. The show had completely derailed. This wasn't part of the script. Not like this. The camera stayed tight on Rhea, who was weeping, not in pain, though the pain was clearly agonizing. She was weeping in fury and humiliation. Her triumphant return, the moment she had dreamed of during every painful day of rehabilitation, had been violated. It was gone. The crowd, which seconds before had been celebrating, was now silent. It was the silence of shock, the kind that follows a tragedy. They didn't know how to react. They had just witnessed a dream become a nightmare. The broadcast abruptly cut to a commercial, leaving the world with one lingering, horrifying image: the returned queen, broken and defeated, in the center of the kingdom that was supposed to be hers. The minimalist stick figure animation in our minds follows Liv as she pushes through the curtain. The atmosphere backstage is even more tense than in the arena. There is no applause. There are no congratulations. There is only a thick, heavy silence. Other superstars, her peers, are lined up against the wall, their eyes wide. Some look horrified. Others look impressed. A flicker of fear and respect in their gaze. She had done what no one else dared to. She had crossed a line that everyone else was terrified to even approach. An official, red-faced and screaming, runs up to her, gesturing wildly about going off script, about the danger, about the consequences. Liv doesn't even look at him. She simply brushes past her shoulder bumping his, and continues her walk. She has become untouchable. In that single act, she had seized more power than any championship could grant. She had become the roster's apex predator. Management was furious, but what could they do? She was now the single most talked about person in the industry. She had made herself the new center of the universe, and she did it by extinguishing its brightest star. The balance of power didn't just shift, it shattered. The next 24 hours were a blur of digital chaos. The clip of the hug and the betrayal wasn't just a wrestling story, it was a mainstream event. It was replayed on sports networks, debated on talk shows, and dissected by bloggers. The words monstrous, diabolical, and unforgivable were trending worldwide. But so was genius. The fan base was violently divided. On one side, there was the white-hot rage of the fans who felt personally robbed. They had been invited to a celebration, only to be made witnesses to a mugging. They called for Liv to be fired, suspended, or worse. But on the other side, a new, darker contingent was growing. They were the ones who respected the audacity. They saw the revenge tour not as a gimmick, but as a philosophy. They praised Liv's commitment, her willingness to sacrifice popularity for pure, uncut villainy. She hadn't just attacked Rhea. She had attacked the idea of the happy ending. She had told the world that in this new era, there are no heroes. There are only survivors. And in the cold, calculated landscape she was creating, she was the only one left holding the knife. We forget about the rehab. We see the injury. We see the return. But we don't see the monotonous, grinding, painful work in between. We don't see the 6 a.m. physical therapy sessions, the agonizing pain of stretching rebuilt ligaments, the crushing psychological doubt that asks, will I ever be the same? Rhea had done all of it. She had pushed through the pain, through the isolation, through the frustration of watching someone else hold her championship. She had done the work, not just to come back, but to come back stronger. That triumphant walk down the ramp was supposed to be the payoff. It was the period at the end of a dark chapter, and in one single moment, Liv Morgan ripped the page out of the book. The steel chair didn't just re-injure a shoulder, it shattered a psyche. All that work, all that pain, undone in an instant. The physical recovery would be hard, but the mental recovery would be harder. How do you come back from being humiliated at your absolute highest moment? How do you trust the roar of the crowd when you know someone is waiting in the shadows with a chair, smiling? We all thought this was about revenge. We thought this was Liv Morgan finishing the job she started months ago. We thought the message was simple. I injured you, and I can do it again. But we were wrong. This wasn't about revenge. It was about replacement. Look back at the moment. The hug wasn't just deception. It was a transfer. It was a symbolic act of pulling Rhea close, of stealing her warmth, her connection with the crowd, her mommy energy. And the attack wasn't just an attack. It was a shedding. Liv was killing the underdog persona that had defined her entire career. She was destroying the last piece of the old Rhea so she could become the new one. The real message wasn't for Rhea. It was for the audience. It was Liv saying, "You loved her because she was dominant? I'm more dominant. You loved her because she was ruthless? I am ruthless. You loved her? Now you will fear me." Liv Morgan didn't just want to take Rhea's title. She wanted to take her place. And as she walked away, leaving the hero in a broken pile, the terrifying realization set in. She just might have done it.